The US economy likely to have a strong recovery from the pandemic-induced slump in the second half of 2021. However, the resurgence of COVID-19 jeopardizing the next two quarters. That is according to the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas President Robert Kaplan. He spoke to Bloomberg's Mike McKee at Bloomberg's Future of Finance 2000 event.
My job is a little easier in some ways. My job is to call out what I think the economy is doing and what would help it and what would hinder it, and let policymakers then on the fiscal side make those decisions. And it's clear that this pandemic has been very unusual in that normally when you have a severe downturn, you'll have a drop in household income and you'll have a drop in consumer spending. We didn't see that here. Consumer spending stayed solid, mainly due to fiscal stimulus. Where now, as we sit here today, we can't tell how much savings is left for people who've lost their jobs, how much savings left from fiscal stimulus running out, but it's going to run out. And if we don't renew it, we'll see a drop-off, we think, at some point in household income and consumer spending. So I think policymakers on both sides of the aisle, elected and appointed officials, are very aware of that. So it wouldn't surprise me to see some extension of this fiscal stimulus sooner rather than later, because in this resurgence, we have millions of people who are making ends meet based on the extension of this fiscal stimulus. If you don't get it, it won't just hurt them, it'll hurt the entire economy because it will weaken consumer spending.
Joe Biden said yesterday we're likely headed into a long, dark winter because of COVID, but it sounds like you're not as pessimistic.
I think the next 2 quarters are going to be very challenging, very difficult, and we're starting to see it. The best way we measure the impact of the resurgence is on mobility and engagement, and we're starting to see it roll over in cities that have a resurgence. El Paso, Texas, is an example where mobility and engagement has dropped off because the healthcare system was overwhelmed and they had to institute lockdowns. We're seeing people power through this pandemic and be more willing to engage in their daily activities than were in April. The danger is that if the resurgence gets bad enough where it overwhelms healthcare systems in various cities, they may not have a choice but to institute lockdowns to protect their healthcare system and people's access. And that's a real downside risk and a danger. But again, that's over the next couple of quarters. We're still hopeful as we get through into the spring and we get a dissemination or beginning of dissemination of a vaccine, you're going to start to see a better economy. And our estimate, by the way, for GDP growth for next year is around 3.5%, but a lot of that growth is back-end loaded in the second half of the year. So cautious and concerned about downsides in the short run, but optimistic over the horizon.